Scorpio. What does the 8th house represent? Desires, occult, unseen, the repressed aspect of our psyche. What do we secretly want? The Scorpion. It goes below the surface. You don't see it, but it stinks. It slithers and then attacks. They have a strategy. They deal with the occult, with the unknown, but they do it secretly. Wherever you have Scorpio in your chart, that's going to give you a better stance on what life situation do you have those characteristics in. If you have Scorpio in the 4th house, which the 4th house represents your home, your womb, your nurture, where you feel comfortable at. So if you have Scorpio there, then that means that you're going to have a deep occult, repressed life where you are very deep with the way you think, with the way you internalize things, so you can see behind the surface and you can adapt to all of other people's emotions because you can see their shadows. You can see the unseen. Scorpio's been through it all. They see everything. But they're never going to tell you. It's not like Aries. That's a distinguishing aspect with Aries. They're both ruled by Mars, which is the planet of aggression, passion, what we go towards. But Scorpio is the internal aspect of Mars. Aries is the external aspect of Mars. Aries is head on first. They go towards whatever they want and they're the pioneers. They're cardinal. Scorpio, it's fixed, water. It's fixed with the way they deal with their emotions. So they can be stuck in an emotion for years. But that's what makes them wise in their emotional life, and that's what makes them deep, because they've been through it. They know their shadow better than anyone else. Wherever you have Scorpio in your chart, that's going to give you a better stance of the deeper aspects of yourself. And if you have a lot of Scorpio characteristics, that means there's a lot of transformation, a lot of deep things going on in that specific house or in that specific planet, whatever constellation you have aspecting that. Depending on what ascendant you have, so depending on your first house, that's going to dictate how the other houses follow up. If I have Virgo in the first house, then I'm going to have Libra in the second, in the third, I'm going to have Scorpio. All of those characteristics we talked about the Scorpio archetype, that's going to be placed in the 3rd house. So my house of communication, of dealing with the thinking process and using my Mercury, but not in a practical way, but more in a curious way, in an air sign way. That's coming from the Gemini archetype. But since my rising starts in Virgo, that means that my 3rd house has the archetype of Scorpio. So that means that my life situation of the 3rd house of communication, of everything that has to do with the curiosity, is in Scorpio. And what do you see me posting about in YouTube? I'm always very curious about the weirdest things. I'm always very deep with the way I like to think about things, even if it's mundane. I like to make it deep. I like to know about it. That's my thinking process, and that's where my curiosity drives me. That gives me a better sense of how to fuel my curiosity. Now I understand that I have that aspect of myself, and I have to give myself that ability to see my shadow ways of thinking and undercover whatever I want to undercover about philosophy, psychology, or whatever interest you might have. That's Gemini. Gemini is always curious. They're always talking with everyone. They're always up in there. Everything that comes from that archetypal structure is actually stemming from the 3rd house. Scorpio is ruled by Mars and co-ruled by Pluto. Pluto is an external planet. And even though it's modern known as being ruled by Pluto, I think it's more ruled by Mars because it has a stronger influence. And Pluto is the coloring. That's why Scorpio goes through a lot of transformations through their life. That's what makes them deep. That's what makes them wise. They go through a lot of mental transformation and external transformations. That makes them, in the 8th house, repressed. They have this repressed aspect of themselves. Just because they've been through so much, they have a lot of trust issues. But that's what makes them unique and wise. And you are a Scorpio too. We all have Scorpio influences in our own unique chart. You're always going to have an influence of a sign. You're all of these signs. It's depending on life situation, you're gonna have that sign playing out the most. Those characteristics, those archetypes playing out the most. It's decoding the instinctual aspect of the archetypes of the constellations, and then getting deeper into the precision of the houses and the planets and how they aspect each other. So the houses in astrology are the archetypal structures that define the story of our whole psyche. When we start to decode each of the individual archetypes playing out in our own unique life situations, then we get a better sense of our life direction, our sense of success individually for us. That's an individuation model, Jung pioneered. And the archetypes, the myths within each life situation, is a combination of our psyche, of our personality. The more we understand where everything is placed, depending on the aspects of the planets and depending on the different triplicities, we can start to decode how these energies are playing out uniquely for you in your own mind, in your psyche, in your psychological traits that are keeping you in that mental state. Because everything is a story we tell ourselves. That's the essence of shadow self, of understanding the mystic aspect of ourselves. What do we need to see about ourselves? What are we repressing? That is deeper, that it's the shadow. What characteristics that we can see through astrology, Greek mythology, we can understand to see how literature and the stories, the characters play out individually in each life situation when we apply it to astrology. But generally, the stories, the myths, are all a combination of what we individually tell ourselves. A deeper way of looking at psychoanalysis, it's being a psychoanalysis of yourself. You become so strong doing so that you have this resilience within. You know yourself. No one can take that away from you. You have that value within. You're not going to be disrespected by anything externally that doesn't resonate with what you hold within, your energies. You know your energies, so you can play with them. You can use them. It really is a matter of understanding these energies and how this plays out in your chart. Then depending on the different archaic structures we have within each life situation, we're going to get a better overview of as a whole. What do we need to work on? What are the energies we can tap into? What are the characteristics of each constellation I can start implementing and playing out with those energies? And depending on what planets you're going to have in that house, it's going to give you a better sense of what influence you're placing in each life situation. So when we mathematically calculate everything, we get a better sense of what we can play with in our own unique psyche. What are the tools we have? What are the energetical factors we have to construct our future? For me, personally, it helped me in a mental way, in a reassurance way, where I can be disciplined with the things I actually wanted to be disciplined about. I just had that self-doubt, and astrology gives me that assurance. It's like a blueprint. I can always tap back into it and see what energies I might need to play with. When you get your blueprint, your birth chart, you get an overall of your unique energies, and then the horoscope is more how are those energies playing out now combined with your birth chart.